It's going to be a little bit loud coming through. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of the Gooner Talk podcast, where I'm joined by 2 or 3 fantastic people to discuss what is once again back to normal, back to regular service, an Arsenal defeat in a indifferent season. And obviously we're talking to you off the back of Arsenal's 1-0 loss at Aston Villa at Villa Park, which was a game which, I mean, you could have easily predicted after beating Manchester City and prior to that beating Liverpool that Arsenal would go out and put on a performance of a lifetime and obviously drop points against Aston Villa. It was written in the stars as Arsenal fans. We would have to go and sit through this. And we did. And so we're going to do a little bit more than that and talk about it for an hour. Not a whole hour. We're definitely going to talk about some more positive stuff too. But I'm joined by 2 fantastic people. First off, it's my right-hand man, Tactical Breakdown podcast co-host. It's Drew. How you doing, fella?
Miserable as always. I'm just kidding. No, I'm doing well. And as Lee and I spoke about before, there's nothing to be upset about. So yeah, things are good.
Awesome. And joining us also on the panel, he's currently muted, so he's going to unmute himself just now. I knew he would have forgotten to do that. There he is. Look at him tapping away ready. There he is. How are we doing, Lee, son?
I'm all good. Like, I can't believe. See, I'm not used to all this professionalism. See, so there you go. So yeah, all good.
A bit of a deep to say on Arsenal. Not used to professionalism.
Well, did you see? Well, what we had yesterday, like, you know what I mean. Well, but I won't go into that. It was good fun, like, you know what I mean. So it's all good.
Please do make sure, listeners, you go check out Lee on the Same Old Arsenal. Check out their stuff. It's really, really good. Moving forward with the show, though, obviously we are here. We look like we're in much better sorts than we should be after what was not a great game. Lee, I got to enjoy some of your highlight reels from your watch along. It was entertaining. It was you weren't in the best of moods. Talk me through your reaction to that game.
Do you know what? I'm going to say I'm still buzzing because of Saturday, because Saturday was, to me, everything I've wanted from Arsenal for a very, very long while. Performance-wise, the way we set up and all that. And anybody that wants to criticise that, go and applaud somebody else. Because to me, that was a masterclass how to play against a top side, probably away from home or whatever.
You might
what he did that about was getting to the next round or either.
You might doing that crackly robotic thing. You know what happened last time when we had you on? I said it's catching up. I don't know if you can quickly switch, but it's going weird. It's going really strange.
Is it all right now?
When you slow down,
all right now, or?
Yeah, it seems to be okay. Keep going, and we'll see if we can muddle through.
Right, well, I'll try not to dance, like, you know. So,
okay, that might be it.
Yeah, so I think it was just, it was just about getting. It was a fantastic performance, and I was absolutely delighted with that. Yesterday, I looked at it and I thought, I want us to do well and we win the game. But when you look at it in realistic terms, no one wants to get injured. You don't want to put it, which me and Drew were talking about this earlier. You don't want to go in for a tackle, which is going to get you suspended for the final, like Eddie done when and then you get a 3-game ban, you're going to miss the final. Psychologically, in your head, you just switch off a little bit. And you could see that. What I see in yesterday's game was one team that desperately wanted to win and another team that it didn't matter whether we won, lost or draw. And that's how it was. We'd give it a go in the second half a little bit, but we weren't really at the races. And I'm afraid that we've got another one of these to come on Sunday. But for me, the biggest thing is we're in the FA Cup final, and that's the most pleasing thing. And I'm as me and Drew were talking earlier on, we could only get as high as 8th now, as low as 10th. So do you want to risk getting injured or suspended for a cup final for that? I wouldn't, and I would be left definitely on the
relegate Troy Deeney.
There is that, but I can tell you another thing. If the manager comes up to me on the old Zoom meeting or whatever they're doing on the next couple of days and says to me, "I'm resting you for this game, but you're in the final," I'll be rubbing my hands, going, "Thank you very much, boss. I love you." You know what I mean? Because I ain't going to worry about getting injured. I'm not going to worry about suspended, and I'll be happy to miss a game of football knowing that I'm in the cup final. And I'm pretty sure a few of the other lads are going to be thinking that as well.
Drew, that's a really interesting take from Lee, because there's part of me that wants to talk about how we should be looking at momentum and should be using this sort of game against Watford maybe to even, I was suggesting we should play the exact same team we want to play in the cup final in this game to sort of set what Arteta wants to do, tell the guys this is where you're going to be playing, the best preparation. Or actually, do you fall on the side where Lee is more, let's protect these people, let's rest them, let's get them in the best sort of physical frame ahead of that game? Where do your head sit on that one?
I mean, I'd rather protect them. And I take Lee's point that, getting a booking or sending off, especially on match day 38 against Watford would be really unfortunate. But for me, I think, you're playing against a Villa side and moving forward a Watford side that have everything to play for still. So they have to go into that match as if it's, their life's dependent on it. So when you're playing against a team like that, who kind of really have to almost throw caution to the wind in a certain way, that would increase the percentage chance of someone coming off injured, and especially because we started, we did some rotation against Villa, but, Laka, Oba both still started. Luiz was in the starting 11, obviously Ceballos was there. So we were still using some key players who you would assume, obviously, that would start in a cup final. So, and you just look at the performance, and I don't necessarily know if Arteta would have told them, take your foot off the gas in the match. But I think it's clear that the players, maybe through their own actions or maybe not, they didn't really look at the races, really, did they? So, I think we looked like we played at like 30, 40% throughout the course of that match. I do think that a lot of the players will have their eyes on that cup final moving forward, and I can't really blame them. And again, if you look at the table mathematically, it's highly unlikely we were going to get Europe through the table, and then FA Cup, would be our way through. It's just about priorities. There's too many variables through trying to get a result against Villa and a result against Watford. Obviously, you want to see it maybe for continuity's sake or momentum going into a cup final, but that requires too many other clubs to slip up in those performances. And in the FA Cup, we hold our own destiny. You win the final, you're in Europe. In the Europa League. So I would tend to side with Lee. Doesn't happen very often, maybe like 50% of the time. But this is not an instance where me and Lee are pretty much on the same page. Yeah, and just feel like there are bigger priorities right now. And if Arteta has said as such in his pressers that getting Europe for us is vital this season, and obviously Champions League has been out the window, but getting Europa League would be massive for us right now. Particularly not just that confidence boost and maybe that additional income but that's something that we can take to the negotiating table. If we're going to try to make additional signings in the summer, we can at least say to someone, put whatever name in you want, that at least there's some semblance of European football next season at Arsenal, and that can make a difference. So, and also trying to keep someone like Oba at the club. If we're playing in Europe on some capacity, he's more likely going to want to stay in the first place, and that's huge. So we take what we have and we try to move forward with that. So.
Let's have a jump into the live chat and get some of the guys' reactions. Peter Renner says, why is Arsenal helping a rival buy a defender? We so badly need to be buying one of their defenders they don't want. It makes no sense. If rumours are true, what is your guys' opinion? Obviously, that's the news on Stones, which is a really strange one. I think we'll definitely come back to that question towards the end of the show because we're going to have a section on that. I want to try and stick as much to these sort of games as possible. Owen Young, who is a fantastic member of our upcoming surprise, which I'm not going to name too much about. Drew knows all about this, but we're going to try and keep it under wraps. Lee, don't worry, I'll tell you after. But Owen says, unfortunate result, but we can't split the dummy out. If we win FA Cup, that's more than anyone could have hoped for, given how the season has gone. Let's go back to the Aston Villa game, Lee, and look at some individual performances. Or lack of, we should say, in some areas. Granit Xhaka wasn't picked in this game, and we went a goal down in the first half. Second half, he came on, and we looked slightly, if anything, a bit better. How important is this guy now to what Arteta wants this team to do?
I think he's vital when things are when we're up against it a little bit, like i.e. Liverpool and Manchester City. But I still don't think he's the answer when we've got to break teams down. And I don't think that's his fault. I think that the reason that being is because we're not confident at the back. We're playing an extra defender instead of getting an extra man in midfield that can break the lines in that position. I think that, you know, the lack of creativity yesterday was so evident that we needed someone that was going to break the lines. And, you know, the player that I thought was the best player on the pitch is someone that I love, and I wish he was in an Arsenal shirt next season. And that was Jack Grealish. He was everything that Arsenal need in that player that's going to go past players and then break the lines, you know. And we've not got no one that can do that. Granit Xhaka, very, very good passer of the ball that sets things up, pushing it wide and everything like that. But he's not going to be one of those players that's going to get beyond the full forwards and getting into the box. I think he's done it once this season. Was it against Norwich and scored? But it's not a regular sort of thing, you know. And that's what we need, somebody doing that, breaking past players. And I thought as much as we huffed and puffed, we was very much like Manchester City on Saturday. I think if we were still out there now, boys, we wouldn't have scored. I didn't think we looked like scoring all game, you know. Yeah. And we've got to find somebody that can get in there and create, and also, before people go on at being Mesut Ozil, create with the work ethic of what Mikel Arteta wants to bring to the club. And it's no good saying I'm going to bring this work rate and do this and do that, and then have lazy players in there that are not going to do it, you know. I think that the other thing is, I think there's, you know, a great partnership built between Ceballos and Xhaka over the last few weeks. I think sometimes, you know, partnerships in football are important, whether they be at the back, up front, or they used to be very important up front, not so much nowadays. But, you know, your left back with your wing back or your wide left player, very, very important. But I also think that midfield combination is. And I think that Xhaka has excelled since Ceballos has been here, and vice versa. But they do, I think, eventually Mikel Arteta will go with 4 at the back when he gets the defenders that he wants in. So allow us to play that 4-3-3, which gives us that floaty midfield player that can try and break the lines, whether it be wide or in the middle. But that's what I think that he'll want to go with. But for me, you know, Granit Xhaka has been absolutely outstanding in the last few games. And I felt that he done okay when he came on yesterday, but that wasn't that performance on how we was going to break down Villa wasn't going to be a Granit Xhaka or even a Danny Ceballos sort of performance. You know what I mean? I think Danny Ceballos draws players in, but he hasn't got that goal to go around 2 or 3 players. So that's something where an area that we've got to look in. But I on the other side of it, Torreira's performance for a player that's trying to push for an FA Cup place, you know, I think it's going to have to, with that performance, he's going to have to bring his tracksuit with him.
Yeah, Drew, that segues quite nicely on to the point I wanted to bring up, because the guy that came in for Xhaka in that team was Lucas Torreira. And it's so weird because when he joined, obviously from Sampdoria in a deal which was, for me, a really big one, because it was Arsenal going out and signing a player that had really impressed for not necessarily top side in Europe, but someone who was playing in a team like Sampdoria that was doing fairly well in Serie A. And Arsenal don't usually go out and get these guys, for me, but we started to do it in recent years. We've seen it with Pepe as well, and obviously that was a bigger deal. But the bargain that I thought we got for Torreira in the mid 20 millions showed me that there's promise for our recruitment strategy. The issue is, I think, clearly been that with Torreira is that he's had to move into a system that wasn't what he was playing at Sampdoria, where they were playing a diamond 4 in midfield with Dennis Prater obviously now gone on to Leicester. But for me, I think it's still disappointing where he's developed to this point. I thought we would have seen more from him. I know that he was injured for a bit. I know that he's faced those problems, but we've seen a diminutive, deep player in Kante excel in the Premier League, and I thought we might see that same thing from Torreira. Do you think it can be simply put down to the mistreatment of him by Emery, or does the player have to take some semblance of responsibility from now being played in his more natural position in the centre midfield or as defensive midfield, that he has to take more responsibility for the point where he's come to now?
It's tricky, you know. And as much as I'm not a fan of this, I think you can easily point the finger at Emery. But then, I mean, the first 6-7 months of his career at Arsenal, Torreira was absolutely brilliant. And you could argue that maybe he was our player of the season up to that point. Such were his performances that everyone was convinced. And then all of a sudden he had a massive downturn. Obviously injuries don't help. And then he's been in and out of the squad ever since. So it's a bit, I think it's I think maybe we did. I think Drago has a point. I think maybe we did slightly overhype his performances for Sampdoria and Uruguay. I think that comes part and parcel with the fact that he was playing in a system with a very simplified role that really suited what he does do well. And at Arsenal, I think because we're not playing a midfield three, you have to be more expansive as a midfielder if you're going to be in just a single pivot. And I don't think that that's his game. I think in an ideal way, he's going to be the link between the two center mids ahead of him and then the back four, where if he simply wins the ball, he gives it to the more creative player. In this case, it would be, someone like Granit Xhaka. And if you're playing out of the back, one of the center backs can just feed him the ball, and he just immediately then sprays something out wide to one of the wingers or gives it to one of the center midfielders. So it's very simple tasks where limited time on the ball. He's not trying to break things down with the ball at his feet, But because we play midfield too, more is required, and I think that's become more and more evident. We've even had similar complaints about Xhaka over the years. Not that he hasn't come on quite well, but people would often say that he was also too limited as well. But now that he's been playing quite confidently, you can see that he actually is a better player across, all the requirements to play that position than we maybe first thought. And I think that's why people are talking about players like bringing in, Thomas Partey, for an example, who is very well-rounded as a center mid. And I think Torreira is a very specific type of player that suits a specific type of system. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it doesn't suit everything that's been going on since he's moved, it's hard to perform in that role. And not every player is adaptable. And for me, I think that's kind of it. I think he's a decent player to a good player. I think he does have something to offer, but maybe just not for us, and that's okay. And you bring up N'Golo Kante. I think Kante is more of a well-rounded player. I think he's got, for a center mid, even though he's diminutive, he's pretty good on the ball. He can drive play. You saw that at both Leicester and at Chelsea before Jorginho really came in and settled down to be that more deeper midfielder. So I just think he's just more of an expansive player, and that's where he still would maybe have value. Whereas Torreira, it's just, if he's not in that one type of system and one role that really suits, he kind of falls off the rails a bit. So, but it just means that we can just sit there and say, the business on paper was solid business. I think we all agreed there. It just hasn't worked out, and it won't be the first or last transfer that's never worked out across the history of football, and it's okay. And then we can say we can either keep him as a depth option for the club, or we can move him on, get a feedback, and then maybe kind of rejig things a little bit and bring in someone who suits more for what Arteta wants. I don't think Torreira does suit what Arteta wants or needs, so we can say that maybe he's going to be one of the players that can get binned, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, so.
Let's go into the chat box. I mean, they're going to agree with you, Drew. O'Malley says spot on Torreira isn't technical enough for an Arsenal midfield. Bulgarian Gooner says it's fair to say Torreira is in a bit of a pickle right now. Fred Sal123 says Thomas Partey would fit Torreira's role perfectly. Now, I kind of disagree with that to an extent, because Torreira I see is more of a defensive midfielder, and Partey for me plays slightly more advanced that in more of a in between a 6 and an 8, I suppose. And the next comment from Khalid is, what are your thoughts on Danilo Pereira of Porto as a DM? Well, we're going to look into that, fingers crossed, tomorrow in a tactical breakdown on the player. I'm not keen on him, and I think that's why Bulgarian Gooner says, oh, no, you didn't, Khalid, because I think people know my thoughts on Danilo Pereira and why I wouldn't want him, but doesn't mean we're not going to cover him, which we will do tomorrow. And O'Malley is then asked, can we talk about Kolasinac, which was kind of where I wanted to take the next part of the conversation. Someone else that struggled in the game, the Bosnian international, has been playing in this left centre-back role and has been frustrating fans, it's fair to say. It's frustrated me. He's frustrated the hell out of John in our WhatsApp group. All he does in that group is go on and moan about Kolasinac in games. What are your thoughts around the guy? Do you think his time at Arsenal is coming to an end? And would you put him anywhere near this team with the last 2 games remaining?
Oh, well, I'd play him against Watford because it don't matter. You know what I mean? But I think his time's coming to an end. Listen, he's been one of those players that's done a job for us, but unfortunately, he's just not good enough. He's just not good enough, and it's just not worked out for him. Technically, he's not probably he's okay, but defensively, I'm not too sure about him. If I'll be honest, he's a powerhouse. Something that I felt that we would, we needed. But realistically, when people say, "Oh, we need these big, strong players," they've got to be good enough, you know. And unfortunately, he's got all the physical attributes to be a top player, but he isn't good enough technically and mentally as well, you know. So listen, we got him for free. It's cost us some big wages, but at the end of the day, if we can get him off the books and get someone else in there, I think would be what we needed. And I think that there's a few of those players now that are, you know, are becoming at Arsenal. I think what Mikel Arteta has done is he's sort of, I don't know, he's put them out there, like, you know, to show off what they can do and what they can't do, and basically, like, you know, when he goes into a meeting with the owners and the board and the recruitment, he'll be saying, look, I've give this fella these many games and he's just not to the standard that we need. And I don't think that's an insult to Kolasinac or anything like that. I just think that it's just the way it is, and sometimes you've got to be ruthless. And I think Mikel Arteta coming in as sort of like it's a thing where he can just sweep the broom. You know, I mean, he knows who he wants, and he's got to be ruthless. And I think that Kolasinac is one that is going to be. To be honest, he's not the only one in that back line. I'd get rid of about 5 of them. But you know, it depends how much you can get from him, you know. And but ultimately, do you know what? I watch him and I don't think you know, when people say, oh, they hate him, and they don't. I don't hate him, because do you know what? He gives it his all. He gives it his all. He tries his best, but his best ain't good enough, boys. And that, you can't hate someone because of that. You know what I mean? He gives it his all. But for me, he's on borrowed time at the Arsenal.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think that when you're looking at someone who came in for free, the biggest drawback of him beyond what he's offering on the pitch is big wages. He's on a wage of just over 100 grand a week, I think, which is a hell of a lot of money to be spending on someone. When you look at our best team, he isn't in it. You're looking at Tierney playing on the left sort of centre-back role where he's playing now, and possibly Saka or Mainsley, if he's going to play as well as he did against Manchester City, playing there. And if he doesn't, you've then got a case of when Marie comes back, he's probably going to be put into that left centre-back role with Tierney as a more of a wider option in a back five if we do choose to go with that. But Drew, I want to come on to our next point, which is a bit of a criticism of Arteta. The substitution where we decided to take off David Luiz and leave Kolasinac on at left centre-back. Do you think this is sort of a sign of an inexperienced manager that has so much faith in the system that he wants to play, which is clearly to have a left-footed left centre-back and a right-footed right centre-back, that he's willing to sort of sacrifice a better defender in David Luiz to keep on Kolasinac playing in that role? Do you think it's a mistake from him to be so loyal to this defensive system that he wants to play, or is it something that he should be sort of, well, praised for, I suppose?
Again, maybe a bit of both, and I'm not trying to fence it, but the whole point, and I think a lot of us kind of had this discussion over the last couple of weeks, is that as a new manager coming in, and he really wants to it's clear he wants to hit the ground running starting next season. So if he views the remaining matches we've played as just an extended preseason to where he can really bet in the things that he wants, then I think that's commendable. I think right now, and when it became clear that we were always going to be on the outside looking in into getting, Europe via the league, there's no better time to really give the players the practical application of what they're being taught rather in training. You can train as much as you want at Colney, but you have to apply that in matches. And I think that's really what he's trying to hammer down, and there's nothing really wrong with that. So yeah, I mean, I could take the point and your point maybe that, it's a potential sign of naivety or stubbornness, that he really wants to make sure that it's this way or no other way. But if you remember, when Klopp went to Liverpool, his entire first season was, this is the way we're playing, and sometimes to their detriment, but for the long term, it paid off, didn't it? Same thing with anywhere where Pep has gone. No matter what happens on the pitch, they're playing one way, and it's rare that he makes actual tactical changes. He might make changes of switching players in different roles, bringing certain players off the bench in key moments, but the overall ethos of what he's trying to do in terms of what he's trying to instill in the side doesn't change. And I think Arteta maybe would have picked up on that potentially. And again, Arsene Wenger kind of is the same way. So I think you might see more changes from him moving forward next season when he knows that the core of what he wants to do has already been bedded in. But for now, I think that's his goal, and I think because it's not just the fact that, maybe that Kola didn't play well there, but you have to also get used to the fact that if you're going to be playing in a system where the left center back is left-footed, it's not just about that player's position. It's about every player around that position that associates themselves tactically with the left center back. They have to get used to the fact that they're going to be even just little things of ebb and flow of the match, where if I know my left center back is left-footed, how to open your body up, how to position yourself to make sure that they get the pass, to make sure that the passing chains remain available if you know that that player is going to be using their left foot. These are little things that you can only get used to from a second nature standpoint by doing it time and time again, by repetition. So I think for me it's commendable. I mean, I can get the frustration in it for sure, but I think that's the only way that we're going to be completely crisp in certain areas come the beginning of next season from match day 1. We shouldn't be worrying about or asking these questions match day 10, 11, and 12 next season. Then we should be asking questions. If we're still having those same issues, why isn't the system bedded in yet? Come that point where we're kind of in trouble. So if we can get it embedded now and through preseason, come whenever it is, late August or September, when the season actually begins again, we don't have any questions to ask now. It's just full foot forward, and that's kind of what you want.
Lee, sort of last questions around the Aston Villa game. I saw a tweet from Tim Stillman, who is obviously a very well-respected member of the Arsenal community amongst his writing and stuff. But there was a tweet I saw from him which I kind of disagreed with. It was about how there was a graphic of Arsenal's passing, and that the area around the opposition's box in the central part of the pitch was very empty. And most of the passes that we were making in an attacking thinking way were made to wide areas, because our creativity centrally just doesn't really exist too much right now without a number 10 or a more creative number 8 in the midfield. And then there was a tweet that was attached to that from Tim, which basically read about how it's a bit cliche to say that Arsenal didn't have the same fight and ambition in this game as they did against Manchester City and Liverpool. Now, I replied to that tweet effectively by saying, I don't think it's cliche. I think both points have value to them. I personally don't think that Arsenal did show the same ambition and fight and grit in the game against Aston Villa as we saw against Manchester City, for instance. But I do agree that Arsenal centrally lack a lot of creativity, and that is one of the biggest reasons why we lost. I just want to get your thoughts on those 2 points and actually how you think that Arsenal could change that come the cup final.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying there and see what he's saying there. Like, you know what I mean? It will change in the cup final because it's a cup final. It's a different game. Look at the attitude of it all. You have to also look at Mikel Arteta when we talk about David Luiz being taken off. Why was he taken off? Because at the end of the day, you know, you don't want to risk him. I don't think David Luiz are playing the next game because he's vital to us, to the way we play in the back three system. If he doesn't play in that back three, I think there was a game, was it against, I think it was Leicester, when he got injured and he come off and the back three was never the same. So he's a pivotal player to the way we play at the moment. So, you know, listen, I've got no doubt that all the players went out there on yesterday to win the game. I got no doubt that all the Liverpool players went out to beat Arsenal on the day. But when a team wants it a little bit more, and you know you're not quite at the races, particularly at this level where it is fine margins, you know that's what it is. Now Liverpool tonight are playing for nothing, but they've got the trophy celebrations afterwards, and they don't want to mess that up. They want to win that game and enjoy the party. Now, to enjoy the party tonight, it'd be much better if they win tonight. All of a sudden, look at their performance tonight: 3-0 up against Chelsea. You know what I mean? Who are wanting it? But Liverpool are a better team, and if they're going to match the ambition and work rate of the team, they're going to come up triumphant. Arsenal worked their absolute socks off to a man, to a T. Now, I goes into yesterday's game. I didn't expect Lacazette to be playing. You know, after the work rate, he ran himself into the ground on Saturday. You know what I mean? And then you're saying to him, well, run yourself in the ground again tomorrow. And I don't think that he quite did do the same sort of work. I'm not saying that he didn't play as well, but, you know, Aubameyang, you know what I mean? These players have... you've got to understand they're humans, you know what I mean? And in going through their mind, they've seen, for instance, Mustafi give it his performance of a lifetime. I thought he was absolutely sensational on Saturday, but for the last minute, diving into a tackle to keep his team in the cup competition, he does his hamstring and is probably going to miss the final now. That can happen to somebody yesterday. And then, you know, what's the reward for that? It's to not be in the final, you know what I mean? It's all psychological sort of stuff. And it's all right saying out there, and I totally agree with what Drew said. Mikel Arteta didn't say to him, go out there and not perform. He's wanting to go out there and perform. But, you know, I've played in big games at my level, and we've got a cup final coming up. I'm not going to get injured or suspended for a league game when you got the cup final in the game. And I can tell you, lads, this is straight away. You know, say if you're going through on some players going through on goal, take one for the team. You know, you're going to take one for the team against Watford, and then they go and sit out the cup final because of it. You know what I mean? No, you're not. So there is things that your mental attitude changes towards the game, and if you don't understand that, then fine. It's that's the way that it is, and I you know, you want Arsenal to go out and perform every week. I'm sure if Arsenal, for instance, put it another way, if Arsenal had to win that game yesterday to get Champions League football, you would have seen a completely and utterly different performance. You know what I mean? But there was nothing riding on the game for us. There's riding everything on the game. Now, Watford, you know, I'm sure if I was a manager of Watford come Saturday, what I would do, and the first thing I would say, and I know it's not so much because it's a more modern game now, but going back a little while ago, it had been right. We're desperate to win the game. Give them a few hard tackles. You know, see if they fancy it because they've got the cup final next week. So they're going and clatter a few people, trying to upset the, you know what I mean? And you all say, oh, look, I don't want to get injured. I ain't going to mix with him. I ain't going to mix with him today because, you know, I mean, there's a chance that, you know, a couple of those Watford boys are quite big boys. Troy Deeney smashing you about a little bit. Yeah, all right, Troy, you can have that ball because I don't want to get injured. I can see that happening. You know what I mean? So don't, think if you get a poor performance on Sunday, that doesn't mean to say, you know, this thing about momentum. I go back to 98 when we won the league with 4 games to spare before the cup final. I don't think we won a game after that. And I'm going, momentum. We need to beat these games. You know, come to Newcastle in the FA Cup. We blew them apart, boys, because, you know, the team was good enough to switch it on and off. I'm not saying this team, by the way, Arsenal's good enough to switch it on and off. But you know, my point was, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, momentum, it's a different kettle of fish. We're playing a completely different way against Chelsea, which we will do against Watford and Aston Villa. So I get the question. I'm not too disappointed we didn't turn up against Villa. You know what I mean? Like, and my answer to that is, and really, in short, I've gone on about 5 minutes for it. But the answer is, to me, if before that game against Manchester City, if you said, I'll tell you what, boys, Drew, Tom, we'll win today, but we'll lose our next 2 games against Watford and Aston Villa. What do you want to take? I know what one I want to take, and that's it. That is it in a nutshell. We've done our job. We've done it on Saturday.
I agree with you. I agree with you in the sense that mentally, like, I'd rather have won the Man City game, obviously, than the next 2 league games. I can't help getting out of my mind that had we have won those 2 games, there was a big chance with Wolves playing Chelsea on the last game of the season that we could have got Europa League qualification through those 2 wins. I can't shift that. It's really difficult to try and shift it. Drew, coming on to the creativity side of things, and especially in the centre of the pitch, there's a lot of things going on in sort of the Coutinho stuff, and trust me, I know that's my reaction too. But why is it that Arsenal can't seemingly create centrally? And what is it that Arsenal need to address in the summer for this to happen? And is Coutinho the answer?
Well, no, Coutinho's not the answer, and I wouldn't touch him with a 50-foot pole. So, I mean, that's the simplest opinion I can give on that. For me, I think Arteta does want to utilize both overlapping and underlapping wingbacks pretty heavily. But I also think that might be born out of the fact that we're playing in a certain tactical setup that might need to be required for now. You can still have the same basic tactical principles, just in a different shape. And I don't think we're going to be using some of those same principles maybe moving forward in a 4-3-3. I think in a 4-3-3, you still have you do for sure still have that ability to have one of those midfield three be the type of player we were just discussing. Someone that can pick the ball up and break the lines, but still not just create when on the ball, but still be able to pick a pass. And I think someone said in the chat box before that, and I said it before as well, ideally, that's the kind of player Ceballos actually is, and you can speak to yourself. You can speak to that as well, Tom. But with what you know of him, he's a more forward-thinking player than we've seen. But when you only have a single pivot, you can't rely on one of those two driving forward constantly every time you have possession. That just leaves you exposed. And as an example, in Xhaka's last season at Gladbach, his main midfield partner normally was Mahmoud Dahoud, and Dahoud's a very forward-thinking player as well, similarly to kind of the player that we're looking for right now. And he would always drive forward, and then anytime Xhaka would join the attack, Gladbach was absolutely ripped apart, essentially. And that's why I think they chucked like 56 or 57 goals in the league in this last season, and they still finished third or fourth. And I think that's kind of the balance that we're lacking right now, is we can't allow someone like Ceballos to really express himself in the way that he's capable, because we don't have that additional cover from that midfield three that we're not utilizing just yet. And I think if it would be a completely different story, and I'm not even just going to say Partey, but if any player of that similar mold, that transformative midfielder you've mentioned, that we've all mentioned it, and if you have that additional cover in midfield, everything changes, which is why someone like Liverpool or City, usually when they're using midfield threes, they allow two of them to get further forward and get themselves involved. So you're having at least 5 players in the final third be influential. And that sixth player will sit back maybe 30, 35, 40 yards from goal and can easily respond to a team maybe getting hit on a break, especially when you're using overlapping wingbacks, which is clear that we're going to be using wingbacks moving forward. I think we can all see how often Tierney gets up, in the final third. You see Cedric do it. You see Bayern do the underlap more often as well. So I think it's clear that we're going to be thinking on more modern terms in that way. So that's why Ceballos is sitting deeper now, and that takes away from their creativity. And that's why, against someone like Villa, who, to their credit, they sat back and defended pretty well, but we kept spraying everything wide regularly because we didn't have anything forward, because maybe they were pinned back too much. So we don't have the balance yet, but I think when things slightly change in terms of the roles of the players, I think you'll see something different. But I agree when you look at it and you say you have one of the second worst defensive record in the league, and we didn't have a single shot on frame, that tells you that we lacked creativity in every single department. And it's so easy to defend, and we did it against City. It's easier to defend when you have them push things wide, and then you have numbers in the box, and you say, well, good luck putting a ball into the box, or good luck breaking down a more compact defense. So we definitely need more balance and more options that we can create things from. And we're just not there yet, But I think over the summer next season is what we definitely need to address. I don't want it to be with Coutinho at all. I'm going to be really annoyed if it is. Actually, I'm not going to lie to you. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. So.
Lee, come on, let's have the Coutinho discussion with you, because it's, for me, I get really frustrated about the Coutinho discussion, because I think a lot of people think that he's something that he's not. I think that a lot of people look at him as this guy that can be the Ozil that we're missing. I think a lot of people think that he's more creative than he is. If you look at his statistics, goal scoring wise, he does a lot better playing on the left wing. And if you look at his last 5 seasons, 4 of those 5 have mainly been on the left wing. He's played way more games at left wing than he has in a number 8 or a number 10 role, which is where a lot of people want. And for me also, I don't really want to see Arsenal play with a number 10. I look at what Liverpool have done this season under Klopp. I look at what Real Madrid do with their midfield, how successful that's been in La Liga. And they don't play with 10s. They play with a deeper midfielder, and then 2 number 8s, one being more of a number 6 than a number 8 in front of them, one which covers more and the other which creates more centrally. So what are your thoughts on that situation and the system that Arsenal need to play to be more creative?
Coutinho is a good one, really. I feel that he would. It's not really. I totally agree with what you're saying. You want one holding midfielder and two midfield players. One that's going to sort of pick up the ball and run, and also one that's going to do the second man running, if you like. So when it goes so into the forwards, he's the one that's going to power through past the defence. Sorry, past the attackers and into the goal that way. Which was someone that Aaron Ramsey done that role like. Aaron Ramsey wasn't really a number 10, but he was like the box-to-box number 8, which is what we're looking for. Box-to-box players probably don't exist neither as well now, but that's just what we're looking for. Now, if he can do that, I agree with you, he probably can play in a couple of roles, creativity-wise, the season before he left Liverpool, he was sensational, whether he was playing from the left or just off of the front. He was sensational. I'm with you. I'm not sure if that's the sort of player that we need. If we was to get him, it would seem to me that, as you say, that he's going off the left hand side, which would mean that what's going to happen with Aubameyang, so like that would be a bit of a worry. What we're looking to get Coutinho is because we're looking maybe to cash in on Aubameyang because he's not signing his contract. They're little things that I worry about. But we do need someone in that midfield. Now, there isn't a rule to say that he could not fit into that system because you look at Dani Ceballos, he's changed his role around and it's been very, very successful the way he plays now. I don't think that he was bought to come in this season or ever looked at him to be the sort of player that he's turned into. Now, he's the player that can do it from one side, as you say, but we need someone to penetrate from the other. My personal choice, it would be Jack Grealish, if I'll be honest, because he can do a few roles. And also, if you don't want... What I want also, Tom, which is a key, is when you go to the likes of Liverpool and you go to the likes of Manchester City, you're going to have to defend. You need to get someone in shape. And Coutinho and Jack Grealish, I think, have got the capacity to do that, where I don't think if we're going to bring in Mesut Ozil can do that. I think Mesut Ozil plays one way. These guys can play 2 or 3 ways. So, but for me, I do like Coutinho, but am I looking at Coutinho from the when he was at Liverpool? Now, when he was at Liverpool, he was sensational. Also, he gives you creativity, which is something that I think that we lack as well, is free kicks in and around the box, not just from shooting, from accuracy as well, corners and things like that. Our corners, by the way, we've got to find someone that can take a corner. You know what I mean? So they're all important things. You know what I mean? When things are tight, sometimes you need someone that's going to break it through a special bit of free kick. I don't think, personally, this team, we've got anybody with the sprinkle dust. There's something that's going to make things happen. Now, if Coutinho, I think Coutinho has definitely got that ability, a little bit of sprinkle, a little bit of sparkle, same as Grealish. But we've got to find someone. Now, I don't know who that is, guys. You know what I mean? If it is Coutinho, if it's Grealish, or someone farther afield. But that is what we need, someone to do that. Now, it could be, somebody that's a lesser name than them two. I'm not really bothered, but we need someone that's going to do that. And I think that what we'll have to do is maybe sacrifice a Guendouzi and a Torreira to get that sort of a player. Now, I don't want realistically Coutinho coming, if he is going to come, and do what he's doing at Bayern Munich, where he's not really settled. You know what I mean? You don't really know what you're going to do. If we're going to get him, we get him permanently or not at all. And and with somebody like that, you have to build it around the team a little bit and be reliable. He is a little bit more of a worker than other certain number 10s in that role. But for me, I think that, we're going to have to if we're going to get somebody in this position, we're going to have to break the bank for it. It's going to be a big signing. It's got to be, it's not going to be a cheap one. It's not going to be a cheap one, but whoever Mikel Arteta decides to go for, I think that's the key. The ball have got to go for it. Now, if he feels that Coutinho is the man for it, then I'm happy to go along with that, Tom. I really am. I'm got a lot of faith in this manager for what he does. And but I take your point that he can play on the left, but there's nothing to say that the manager can turn around and say to him, right, I'm going to play you in this number 8 role and turn you into it like I have done with Dani Ceballos.
Unfortunately, there is bad news not for me, but the other half, because it looks like
counts
Charlton
for you because it directly affects you.
What?
Charlton gone, have they?
Yeah, it looks like Charlton are gone, which isn't great, obviously, for obvious reasons. So send good thoughts my way for the other half, which obviously will have an impact on me. But, it's hopefully they come back next. They've had
Bloody
an awful...
Brentford blew it and all, didn't they? Losing to Burnley.
That's the reason why. That's the reason.
Unbelievable.
Is Brentford, unfortunately. So, yeah. Oh, well. You live and you move on. That's what I say sometimes, is that she always turns around to me and says, you don't know what the pain of being a football fan is. Or we're sitting there dealing with relegation season.
Do you know what, moaning about Arsenal and the board and all that, like, if you're a Charlton fan, my God, you know what I mean? Like, they've had it terrible. They've been sold down the river completely, and unfortunately it does look like, well, it is. They're going to get relegated. I don't think there's any way back from Tom, really, unless
just the only thing would be
Brentford score 2 goals in a minute. Ain't going to happen.
Yeah, Blackburn scored 2 own goals, which blew it for Luton's chance of going down. So, it's a big shame, but she'll get over it, I'm sure. She's made of sterner stuff than me when it comes to football and dealing with disappointment. So yeah. Anyway, let's look ahead to the next game, which is a bit odd, because we kind of touched on it earlier on in the show. Lee, you're very much on the side of things where you want to see players rested. You want to see players obviously not risked for the cup final.
Yeah,
Drew, kind of touched on with you that you rather, I think, see momentum and see the cause for winning in that sense. But there are elements that you take on board from Lee's point. So it's going to be interesting to do a prediction from you two, because what I'd like is a prediction. Before we're going to do predictions first, and then we'll go on to user questions. So users, if you want to throw some questions for the last 15 minutes or so, please throw them in the chat box now. But Drew, can I get a prediction for the Watford game, and sort of what type of team you're expecting to see us play?
I mean, we literally have nothing to play for, and I think there's no better time to maybe give some of the other youngsters some time. Nelson was injured, so he didn't feature. But if he's fit for Watford, let him play. Give him some more minutes. Same thing with Nketiah. Let him start through the middle. That kind of thing. And really, you might give maybe 45, 60 minutes to a couple of players you're going to want to use in the FA Cup, but a lot of them should be rested. Lacazette's a prime example. Like we said, Lacazette ran his socks off completely the match before, and he needs a rest for sure. And I think you kind of saw that against Villa in a way. So I wouldn't mind putting out a relatively inexperienced team just to give some of the kids some time. See maybe who's progressing, who you might want to keep moving forward, and who you might want to need as a loan next season, that kind of thing. You have other questions that we need answers. So, and it's not that I don't want to go out and get the right amount of points, but I think as we all discussed, you don't want to risk someone like, say, Aubameyang in a pointless match. Say he picks up his injury and he's out for the FA Cup final. You know what I mean? So just rest your key players. Let the kids go at it. We can't finish any lower than where we're currently sitting. Best case scenario, depending on results with Burnley and Sheffield United, we can finish as high as 8th. But that's, is that really that big of just a point? No. So really focus on the FA Cup. For me, that's it. As for a prediction on scoreline, I'm going to predict a draw. I think Watford still have everything to play for. The level on points with Villa going into the final day. Villa has West Ham, actually, who are now mathematically safe. So both those clubs have something to play for. I'm going to say a 2-2. I think we'll do enough just to not lose, and Watford going to come out strong. But I don't think we're going to be nearly at 100% for it, and I don't think we should be. So.
Agreed. Lee?
Well, I'd like to see, I don't know about you guys, I'd like to see Medley get a chance to have a little run out in this game. And also Matt Smith, who's been on the bench the last couple of games. Why don't they have a little run out just to see what they can do, just to see if they're up for the task. I totally agree with Drew on that. Play Eddie. Even though he may play in the final, but hopefully Nelson can be fit, because I thought he done well against Liverpool. So it'd be good for him to get more minutes under his belt. I'd like to see Willian and have a little run out as well. But I think honestly that Watford will win this game. I think for me, Watford have got to win this game. It's more important that they do, and I think that they go out there and I think they'll beat us 2-1, maybe 2-0 or something like that. But I just want to see us, get through the games. I tell you who I think that deserves a game. Say deserves a game because he don't really deserve a game, but he hasn't played for a very, very long while, and that's Socrates. I think that he should come in for a game because just in case things go wrong in the cup final, and we are a little bit short back there, so he's going to need some minutes under his belt. So I'd expect to see him playing there. And I do expect us to see a few players coming. Do you know what? I'm going to say this now. I'd play Macy in goal as well. I don't want Martinez wrists, you know what I mean, in case anything happens. So I would be very, very happy to see Macy have a run out. And I'd like to think that, like this wrap a few of them up in cotton wool and Martinez being one of them. So I'd like to see Macy in goal and, a few of the players. I don't want to see David Luiz as, I think he's key to us playing with a back three. I don't want to see him playing. And, and I just like the main players I don't want to see. I don't want to see Tobias playing. I don't want to see Xhaka playing. Certainly don't want to see a Bangriang. I don't want that, because I don't want to be every time a tackle goes in, oh, no, I can't watch it. You know what I mean? So I just want a bloody enjoyable Sunday without worrying about getting injuries. The bigger picture is Saturday.
I'm really torn because I get everything there. I get the resting of players. I get that I don't want to risk people. But I'd love to relegate Troy Deeney, Lee. I'd love to relegate him. It would be amazing. I'd get the
Finish his
template.
Premiership career.
I'd love it. I'd have a barbecue. I'd get all the yellow trim all around the garden just to celebrate. Oh, but you're amazing. Come on, surely it's worth it. Worth a little risk.
Maybe we can do it with the squad players. You know what I mean? Listen, some of those players as well, i.e. the Torreiras and the Willocks and Maitland-Niles, because they've got to play somebody at right side of it, whether it be Bellerin or whoever, a chance to, I want to push myself in for a chance of the cup final, push myself, to get into this team. So, some of those guys, some of those younger players and squad players are not just playing for a cup final place, by the way, they're playing for their futures. The only way you can do that is put in good performances. And so, there is a chance that we could still win this game, but I think for an Arsenal fan, look, it don't come around very often when, win, lose or draw, you're not bothered. So enjoy it while you can, because I can tell you what, next season we want to be in a position where we're not in this position, if that makes sense, where we want to win every single game.
Let's go on to some user questions and get you guys really thinking. We're going to try and answer as many of these as possible. So I know I've got two people who love to talk, but please let's try and keep these answers as swift as we can so we can get through as many as possible. Drew, Peter Renner says, do you think we should try the formation that Arteta wants to play against Watford or stick with what he's using now?
Yeah, I think you may as well try it. There's no point in trying to set the framework moving into what we assume we would do in preseason and next season. Simple. Keeping it brief and quick just for you. Yes.
Thank you. That's great. Lee, Christopher Fung says, how much further do you think Arteta can transform Arsenal if the right pieces come in this summer?
I think if he gets the three signings, big signings this season, next season, I think we can challenge top four. I don't think we can challenge for the league. I think we'd be up there, but I don't think the squad's strong enough. But I do feel that top four would be realistic. Yeah.
Drew, question from Owen, specifically for you. You might know you. I don't know if you know this guy. He says, what do you make of Willian and the link we've got to at the moment? Possibly at Cam. Plenty of goals and assists. Maybe not the most sensible deal, but given the current circumstances, what do you think?
Well, if we're linked with similar interests in Coutinho, I'd rather Willian than Coutinho. I think. This will be a slightly less brief answer. I apologize, but I think Willian gets a bad rap. He's Chelsea's second leading scorer this season, and I think he leads the club in Premier League assists this year. He's not exactly a poor player. I think the question around him is, what are his wages going to be? If he wants a 3-year deal at 31, do we want to sign him till he's 34? That I think people's gripe is about the financials about it. But as a player, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to bring in someone who can, even if he's not starting, give you a lot better depth. And as you and I were talking about earlier today, because we're keeping the 5 subs next season, he could be an option off the bench in a number of areas. And when you want to rotate, having him in your 11 is a hell of a lot better than some of the other options we might have. So I'm less against it than other people, as long as it's not going to cost us an arm and a leg financially. So yeah.
Here's my thoughts on Willian. I look at the Willian thing slightly different to Coutinho. I look at him as someone that's this season, if you look at him, he's done very well. He's arguably been one of Chelsea's top 3 players this season.
I know he has been, for sure, I think, right?
Yeah. If you can get if the thing is, it would depend on the wage. If you're looking at bringing him in on like 200,000+ pound per week, then no, you can do one. If you want to drop him down to the mid 100,000s, which is probably what he would command, like thinking about where he's coming from, he's from another Premier League club, he's going to be on big wages, it's at the end of his career, and it's probably going to have a 3-year deal because that's what he wants. He doesn't want to stay at Chelsea for 2 years. He wants a 3-year deal. Now, the thing is, if you look at this situation, he'd be coming in without a transfer fee. We have the link with Kia. I know we don't like buying into it, but sometimes it's a necessary evil. And you look at the need for squad depth. You look at the sides that we've come up against this season, who they can bring off the bench in games, who they can play across different teams. And for me, I think whilst for a lot of people, Willian is, he doesn't inspire. He's not someone that's exciting like a Gelson Fernandez or a Jobaslai or these types of players, young, exciting talents. What he does provide you with is he would provide us with depth. He would provide you with another option, because if you look at our front line, Aubameyang, Pepe and Lacazette, and you look at the options that we've got to replace wide positions, we've got Reece Nelson, Martinelli and Saka. 3 players that 2 of those 3, being Saka and Martinelli, I have a lot of hope for. Nelson I struggle to, but the thing that those 3 have in common is that they're massively inexperienced at the top level. Bringing in someone like Willian for me would add that extra bit of confidence. I don't see it as a classic, we're a retirement home for Chelsea players like Cech and David Luiz, because Willian is still playing really, really well. I don't see too many downsides to the Willian side of things compared to, say, the Coutinho, who would be considerably more wages, who people want to play in a position that we don't play with, and who, if he was to play left wing, would oust Aubameyang. Now, for me, I think the right-hand side is the one that needs more rotation. And for me, I think Pepe needs that competition as well. And probably Willian is a good person to compete with him against. So I'm not massively against the Willian deal. I was at first, but having now looking at it, I'm more open to it. Rydog says it's insane that you want Willian over Coutinho. It's insane. I think we've covered it quite comprehensively why we'd rather go for Willian. The wages are a massive thing.
Willian is straight free. Coutinho would require a loan fee. He's probably going to want bigger wages than Willian as well. It's not about the debate about quality. It's about the whole picture. The financial package around Coutinho is going to be bigger than Willian 100%. So, yeah. Lee, that's my biggest gripe, though.
That's right.
Yeah. No, go on.
Go on, Lee. Let's have your say on this one.
Do you know what? I get both sides of the argument here. I am a little bit resentful to going for Willian because of the Chelsea retirement fund. I do think that, do you know what I mean? I know. To get past that, it's tough though, because it's happened to us so many times. And what makes it even worse is that the likes of Ashley Cole have gone there and been successful, and so has Giroud. So that makes it a little bit. But I can see that Willian being a good fit, or somebody like Fraser at Bournemouth on a free is a good fit for someone to go in that position that's not going to cost us if we've spent big in other areas.
That's the thing.
So that's the key for me. If for instance Arsenal spend big on the central defender, central midfielder, and that number 8 player that we've been talking about, and then they turn around and say, well, to just balance the squad a little bit, we need to just bring in a William or a Fraser for nothing. I think then it's fantastic business. So I'm on the boat of it, let's get our big signings in first, and then that would be a good little, a cameo one for us. But if we're going to say, oh no, William's going to be a main signing for us, I'd rather keep away from that. But I see both sides of that argument there, and I've got to say he's been absolutely brilliant over the last month or so. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think even beyond that, I think this season he's been easily one of them. Latter part of the season, I agree with you. He stepped up more, definitely so. I think the key thing, and this is probably the point we're going to finish on, about the Willian situation is that if you bring this guy in, I think people are looking at it as a sort of on its own that Arsenal shouldn't be looking to bring this type of player in anymore, and that if we were to bring in Willian, it represents like a step back in recruitment. I think that, as you said, Lee, it's completely dependent on who comes in conjunction with Willian. If Arsenal were to bring in Willian and, say, invest in a Thomas Partey and a really top-class centre-back and maybe possibly a young right-back to replace maybe an outgoing Bellerin, I think that looks a lot better. If Willian comes in, say, with an average midfielder and an average defender that are just going to compete with the ones we have currently and not supersede them, then yes, I'd be like, wow, Willian looks the best of a bad bunch that we've brought in. But if Willian is brought in with these other players, I think financially it makes sense. It makes more sense because of Coutinho's not a free. He would require either a fee to buy him or a swap deal. And the swap deal being proposed was Guendouzi, although that looks to be a bit of fake news right now. But say it was Guendouzi, you've then lost a young player that's got a very high ceiling, not just in terms of ability, but in terms of value as well. Has played it and been called up for the French national side. This guy's worth a fair chunk of money. So to waste that possible financial boost on what has been a declining player in Coutinho that mainly plays in a position that's taken up by a superior player in Aubameyang, then I don't get that. But I think that the Willian thing to add depth on the wages, if they were lower than what Coutinho would ask for, and the fee would obviously be very minimal because of obviously his end of his contract, I think it makes a lot more sense. So that's where we're going to finish off the game today, or the podcast today. I did notice that Chelsea were beaten rather comfortably, it seems, by Liverpool currently. I think it's about 3-1 or 4-1. 4-2. 4-2. So, I mean, it's a weird one because obviously Liverpool would dominate possession in that game, whereas Arsenal won't. So it's hard to make comparisons there. I'm hopeful. I'm not sure if I'll speak to you, Lee, on the podcast before the cup final. So let's have a cup final prediction from you. What are we thinking?
2-0 Arsenal masterclass.
Awesome. I'm loving the pod. Drew, I'm sure I will speak to you beforehand on the pod for the Tactical Breakdown pod on Monday, but please do give me a prediction whilst you're here.
Do I have to? Because it might not be what we want to hear. So I'm gonna say 2-2, and we're gonna lose on penalties.
Oh, what's that about?
Yeah. You know what? Like, listen, and it and I'm gonna get so much shit from people in the chat box, and excuse my French, but I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like we still have some problem areas where Chelsea have so many players that can expose us in those areas, and I just feel like I don't know. And for me, Leno is probably a bit better on penalties than Martinez is overall. And that could be a dividing factor. Although they have Kepa, so who knows? He might just turn the other way and not even try to dive. So you never really know. But that's just I'd rather be pessimistic and proven wrong than be optimistic and look a fool. So there you go.
Yeah. Unbelievable stuff. So if I'm thinking we're going to see probably Rob Holding's going to come in for an injured Mustafi, which worries me a little bit. But the last time he played in an FA Cup final, he was unbelievably good with Per Mertesacker. So there's always hope. I think that's the way we usually end our shows. But fantastic stuff from you two, Lee. Really appreciate you coming on. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're up to at the moment.
Always, over on the same old Arsenal, doing a bit of Guns and Yellow Ribbons as well, give them a little plug as well. So they're a good bunch of boys as well, so I've been doing that. So check them out, obviously, follow me on Instagram, Lee Mark Judges, or on Twitter.
Awesome stuff. Drew, same question.
Same answer as always. Twitter is FM Blair, and then the usual outlets that I write for. So there you go.
Usual. You can go find
usual outlets. I like that.
I will leave their links in the description, so please make sure you go and check them out. Quick plug before the end. I'm going to leave a link in the description when I get a chance after the show's finished being live to put a link to pre-order the Modern Footballer magazine, which is coming out at the end of this month and the start of next month. Both myself and Drew are featuring in this magazine. It's an amazing piece of writing from all of the authors involved. It's basically, and that's not me bigging myself up, Lee. It is an amazing.
It seems like it to me. It seems like it to me. You know what I mean? But go on.
There's an amazing piece by this young English Kentish lad who writes about Saliba and Martin Odegaard in there that you might want to check out. Drew, what are you writing in there? What's your piece?
I wrote about things I didn't want to write about, but I was qualified to write about. So I wrote about Kai Havertz's what he's been doing, Timo Werner. I wrote about RB Leipzig, and I wrote about Bayern Munich. So
awesome. Yeah. So it's run by the guys over at Get French Football News and Get Spanish, Get German, Get Italian Football News. Amazing stuff. Really looking forward to that getting released. It's the second magazine. The first one basically sold out from far as I'm aware. So if you do want to get hold of one of these magazines, they go like hotcakes. So make sure you pre-order. They're very reasonably priced. We don't get paid for it. We get nothing. This is just something that obviously we want you guys to enjoy. So please make sure you click that link in the description when I put it up after the show's being live. But it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. I look forward to dropping some news for you next week about the amazing things that come next season. Drew knows all about it. I'm about to tell Lee about it. But other than that, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.